Before we begin the video, if you haven't yet, come on down and join my Discord server. Link is down in the description. Have you noticed a trend with recent Ninjago seasons? Most of them seem to be connected to an elemental power. Today we're taking a look at Ninjago's elemental chapters. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to examine the 6 elemental chapters of Ninjago. Starting us off is the fire chapter. Now some of the stuff in this video, most of it in fact, is going to be my own interpretation. However, it is a fact that the first 15 episodes of Secrets of the Forbidden Spinjitzu are called the fire chapter. That's not an opinion or interpretation. This chapter features a cast of fire-themed villains, Asphira and the Pyro Vipers, who get their powers from stealing Kai's element. The fire chapter doesn't really have a focus, but Kai does play a prominent role as he tries to get his powers back, not only in this chapter, but also in the ice chapter. For example, it doesn't take place in a fire location, such as a volcano, but it does take place in Ninjago City, which we do, to be fair, see on fire for a few episodes. In terms of its actual story, the fire chapter was really meant to be an introduction to the new format and the idea of side episodes, and it was designed to be more fun and casual and chill than it was to tell a serious, I guess, fleshed out story. That was reserved for the second half of Season 11. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the fire chapter. In fact, it's probably my least favorite Ninjago installment. However, it did get us started with the idea of elemental chapters. And moving on next to the ice chapter, again, another chapter which is confirmed. This is a fact. Similar to the fire chapter, the ice chapter has ice-themed villains in the form of the Blizzard Samurai, but also Zane, the Master of Ice, who in this season is a villain, the Ice Emperor. But unlike the fire chapter, this chapter takes place in an ice location, introducing a new realm, the Never Realm, which is a snowy forest land with a lot of ice elements. There's also a lot of wildlife in this chapter too, such as Crag, a Yeti, and wolves too, again kind of fitting this tundra theme. There's also an ice dragon. The villains freeze their enemies. It's really not hard to see why this is the ice chapter. And this also continues elements from the fire chapter, even the idea of fire as an element. We get to see fire as a symbol of hope and warmth in this chapter, whereas in the fire chapter, it was portrayed as chaos and destruction. Although Lloyd is probably the biggest focus in this chapter, it also explores the backstory of the Ice Emperor, how Zane was transformed into this villain by Vex and the Scroll, and how he became a cold, heartless dictator, really representing the ideas you would associate with ice. Most people view the ice chapter as a huge improvement over the fire chapter, since this is where the season got serious and really started to tell a story, but for me, it is still one of my least favorite installments of the series. And now we enter into interpretations. I think Prime Empire definitely qualifies as a lightning chapter, a weak connection, but I think it works. First off, because Jay is the focus of the season. He is definitely the most prominent here. He gets some development in the finale when he compares himself to Inagami and being abandoned. So there's really no doubt about who the focus of the season is. But I also think that there's also a connection to be made with the setting. It takes place in a video game, and video games are, well, powered by electricity. I know this is kind of a weak explanation, but I think to some level it works. Especially when you consider what was originally planned for Season 12. It was originally planned that Jay's mother played a role in the creation of Prime Empire, and that her lightning element was used to power it. Obviously, and unfortunately, this didn't happen, but it kind of shows you how this may have been considered a lightning chapter during its creation. In my opinion, Prime Empire was a good but not great season. It was a huge improvement over Season 11, and it was very fun and action-packed, but it didn't have enough going on in terms of its characters and development. So yeah, again, a good but not great season. Next up is going to be Season 13, Master of the Mountain, which in my opinion definitely qualifies as an Earth chapter. Again, this isn't official, only Fire and Ice are, but there's way more of a connection here to Earth than there was for Prime Empire and Lightning. First off, it is the very first Cole-focused season in the entire show. It focuses on him as he learns about the history of his mother and has to fight the Skull Sorcerer. Number 2, it also takes place underground, inside the Earth. This season takes place in the dungeons below Shintaro Mountain, and in my opinion, it's one of the show's coolest locations. Wu even mentions that Cole has never been closer to the source of his power, but even if that didn't convince you, number 3, this season focuses on Cole's powers. He frequently taps into his connection with the Earth, such as in the 10th episode. We also see Cole use the Spinjitzu Burst in the finale, which is achieved because he is connected with his power. So again, this isn't officially the Earth chapter, but I think it would be really difficult to provide an argument that this isn't the Earth chapter, when really everything about this season to me says Earth. In my opinion, Master of the Mountain is a great season. For me, it was really a return to form for the show, and I love the focus on Cole at the finale, that final fight, Cole versus the Skull Sorcerer. Excellent stuff. Next up is the Energy chapter, but truth be told, personally, I don't really think there is an Energy chapter yet. The reason I'm showing images of the island is because I think a case could be made that the island is the Energy chapter. This case would definitely be a pretty big stretch, but I think if you argue it well, it could work. First off, Lloyd is the mascot of this season and its sets, and while he may not necessarily be the focus, he definitely plays the biggest role in this season of all 6 ninja. This season also takes place in the jungle, a location which has been associated with Lloyd in the past, mainly season 3 as season 8. But let's be honest, those are pretty weak arguments. Tommy Jason himself does not consider this to be the Energy chapter, so if the island isn't the Energy chapter, what is? Well, the Energy chapter very well could be the first season of 2022, season 16 or 15 or whatever you want to call it. If it ends up focusing on Lloyd, I think we definitely have our answer. But if not, I guess maybe this could be considered a weak Energy chapter, the island I mean, or you could just consider season 8 an Energy chapter. But yeah, in my opinion, we don't know what the Energy chapter is yet. I don't think it's season 14. Last but not least is going to be Seabound, which I think is definitely a water chapter for the same reasons that season 13 is Earth. First off, Nia, who is the Master of Water, is the focus of this season. Secondly, much of it takes place underwater in Merlopia, even the parts in Ninjago City. Ninjago City gets flooded in this season, so definitely still that water connection. And third, this season explores Nia's water powers in many ways. For example, her ability to speak to marine life, but also her literally merging with the sea in the finale. This season checks off all 3 boxes. It focuses on the user of the element, it features an element-themed location, and it focuses on the element itself. Even the villain's plans include water. Kalmar wants to unleash Wajira to flood Ninjago and make it like it used to be in prehistoric days. Again, I think it would be really hard to argue that this isn't a water chapter. Seabound is the most recent Ninjago season to air, and one that is really beloved by fans, including myself. I think this is definitely a top 5 season, and it is one of my favorites. Seabound may be over, but there still is a big element from this chapter that isn't. I think in the future, they'll definitely continue the story with Nia. Maybe she returns, maybe she doesn't, but either way, I don't think it's over yet. And that concludes our look at the elemental chapters of Ninjago. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with anyone and everyone you know. Share your thoughts on these elemental chapters below, and I'll see you next time.